Never treat your wife as family, was the advice my father gave me before I got married. They met at a tutoring class where my mother approached my father, who happened to be sitting next to her, for help with her homework. After a short conversation, they realized that my father was a repeating student from a year above. My mother found this odd as he seemed to excel in his studies. "You're so good at this, why do you have to repeat the year?" she asked. "I was too involved with club activities in high school," he explained. At that time, the university acceptance rate was only about 25 to 30%, and the concept of unaccredited universities didn't exist yet. But since my father was aiming for the top 3 choices, he held himself to a higher standard and decided to retake the entrance exams after shedding many tears. They ran into each other again in a restaurant after starting university. "Did you make it into MIT as you planned?" my mother asked, remembering the help he had given her. My father replied, scratching his head shyly. "And you? Where did you end up?" "X university, the one you cried about not wanting to go to," my mother said with a bright smile. According to her, he was mid-drink and nearly choked, coughing for a while before he kept apologizing. She found it endearing, pursued him, and easily won him over. It turned out my mother had a good eye. My father was one of the earliest geeks who immersed himself in his studies and later in his career, being loyal and content with just having a girlfriend. My mother once dragged him to a dance where he bored her by just eating, so she went off to enjoy herself. To her surprise, upon returning, she found a beautiful girl asking him to dance. He hesitated, then handed her some food, saying, "Sorry, I have a girlfriend. But this is delicious, you should try it." My mother was deeply moved and resolved to treat him well in return. But what I witnessed growing up was that in about 90% of their arguments, it was my father who would give in to my mother. She was often forgetful, and he never once got angry with her. The most serious incident was when she accidentally damaged the new car. My father's first reaction over the phone was concern for her safety, calmly instructing her on what to do next, without blaming her, despite the cost. This included when my mother was diagnosed with stage 3 cervical cancer with only a 30% survival chance. "Don't worry about me," she said. "I'll lose all my hair from chemotherapy, I'll look awful, I don't want to treat it. I'd rather go out looking beautiful." When my mother first fell ill, relatives and friends shared many miraculous recovery stories, suggesting we consult multiple doctors to find the best hospital. But as time passed, those voices faded until no one asked anymore, leaving only my father, who quit his job to care for her full-time. My mother was unhappy about this at first, but he reassured her, "Money is not an issue, we don't lack money. What we lack is time together." She stopped complaining but cried, moved by his words, and he had to comfort her, repeatedly asking if she was a burden. "You are a burden," my father sighed, "like keeping a cat. I always think, are cute things always troublesome? But what can I do? You're cute. Foolish girl, you tire me." My father always told me and my sister that our mother was his responsibility, and we should live our own lives. But one day, my sister called me saying our father was missing. It was late, he wasn't answering calls or texts. I rushed home to search for him. Just as we were considering calling the police, we found him in a small park, sitting on a swing, silently crying. I didn't know what to say and couldn't blame him. After letting the family know he was safe, I sat quietly beside him. "Sorry to worry you," he said, explaining that it was their anniversary and seeing a young couple reminded him of their early days, making him feel overwhelmed with emotion. Under my father's care, my mother lived several years longer than the doctors predicted. They didn't waste time, traveling to many places, creating memories, perhaps more than many couples do in a lifetime. The opening conversation happened on the eve of my wedding when I asked my father for the secret to happiness. "Never treat your wife as family," he advised. "Family, like you and me, you'll always be my son, no matter what. But a wife is different, she has a choice. She chose you, and she can leave. Especially in this era, Divorces are common. Your wife is always your lover, someone you must put effort into cherishing. No one is a fool, only if you treat her sincerely, will she respond in kind. When you are old and sick, only a lover can truly be by your side. More than family or children, a lover is the most important person in your life. This speech was repeated at my wedding. My mother playfully scolded my father, but her eyes were full of tears and laughter. Last weekend was their anniversary. Remembering my father crying on the swing, I decided to visit him. He was happy to see me and pulled out a dusty PS2 to play together. We used to play so much that my mother would scold us. "Hey, come help me," I yelled as I was about to lose. "What does it matter?" my father replied quietly, still focused on the game. "No one is here to scold us anymore. It's just the two of us." My mother had passed away over 2 years ago. We couldn't continue the game that day. He cried for a long time. Do you get scolded for playing games by your wife? Of course, who doesn't get scolded? Then she's a good wife, let her scold you. One day when there's no one to scold you, you'll miss it.